Welcome back, everybody, to the Clovenhoof podcast. This is me doing the
Welcome,
intro today.
welcome, one and all.
We're doing the Penguin today. We're doing the Penguin, and we're doing part one of what will be a recurring series. It's quite exciting. I'm going to lead with
Yeah.
this rather than mention it at the time. This is the second release in a row where only I have seen the thing we're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So we did The Apprentice in our little extra bonus episode, and only I had seen that, which is fine. But last 2 weeks ago we agreed to do the Penguin, which normally you'd sort of assume that means both hosts of a podcast might watch, but only I got around to watching it, so we'll see how this goes. We always do some news, don't we? It's kind of relevant to what we're doing today. The Penguin season two is in the works, but that's not all the Batman news there is. There is also a rumored Joker series in the works with Barry Keoghan.
The Barry Kyoka.
Yeah, the Barry Keoghan TV show is rumored to be in the works. James Gunn did debunk this, but there's substantial sort of rumors still that could be in the works and that he will be the main villain in the Batman Part 3, which is sort of no surprise because that seems to be kind of
We
all,
haven't
all
even had the
they do.
Batman Part 2 yet.
We haven't had the Batman Part 2 yet, no. That will
Who's the
be
main villain in that?
maybe Clayface is a rumor I keep seeing.
Clayface.
Clayface, yeah.
You gotta tell us all who Clayface
Do you
is.
not know who Clayface is?
No.
So the iteration of Clayface that they'll probably go with is an actor called Basil Carlo, who through various different ways in various different medias, effectively gains the ability to morph his face into anyone that he wants. They probably will stay away from the sort of more animated show approach of where he's just a big clay monster.
Yeah.
I imagine it will just stay the face changing
Like how they
actor.
stayed away from yeah. So like when because in the last Batman, they're keeping it more like gritty. Also, I feel like the last thing we want right now is a big grey clay monster for him to fight. We've only just got past the big grey monsters era.
Final little bit of Batman news is that Warner Brothers is going to be selling 10 fully functional but not street legal Tumbler Batmobiles from Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight films. Each one it will be priced at $3 million. Do you think that they had 10 of them sat around like after, because they made them for the film, they were fully functioning. Do you think they had 10 of them? They were just like we have to do something with these. They can't just
We
sit
don't
here
want these
forever.
anymore. Yeah. And so if there's so that's 30 million they can make from those.
So in unrelated news, we have a crowdfunder up with $3 million as the target. It's for
A $3 million target.
yeah, it's for crucial treatment for Alfie. He's not very well. Pay money to
Hmm.
that, and we won't buy a Batmobile with it. So the next news
Okay.
item was going to be about Christopher Nolan's new film, which is big film news, and we're a big film podcast. But I've decided that we're skipping that, vetoing that for much more pressing film news, which is that Mattel released a batch of Wicked dolls. And I don't mean dolls that are wicked cool. I mean dolls from the movie Wicked. And like lots of toys now, they have like little QR codes on the back to scan with all the information about the product. And um, somehow Mattel published a porn website URL on the back of their Wicked Dolls box, which saw the website attain its highest levels of
That's
website
so
traffic in over
insane.
12 years. I don't know how that accidentally
How
happens.
in the hell does that just happen by mistake?
From what I can see, the website was called, and I'm not going to look this up to verify it, but the website is called www.wicked.com. So you can understand how the mistake happens, but also surely
Yeah.
they run it through some sort of checks first.
Like you'd think, right?
I feel like they're fairly safe in that I don't think most kids playing with these dolls look at the back of the box.
I mean somebody worked that out, right? Somebody found that. So
Yeah,
somebody's got to
somebody's
have
looked it up. And it says, like I
tried
said,
to go on the website and been like, "Oh,
the website saw their highest levels of website traffic in over 12 years, which, unless the website had zero users in the last 12 years, that's like got to be quite a few people that
Yeah,
did that. Do you think that'll be worth
yeah.
something like in like 10 years time?
I actually saw it. I saw a thing the other day that was like it was like CD copy of Taylor Swift's self-titled album brackets homophobic version because
Oh,
she's now
before
like
she
completely
changed
tried to
it.
cover it up, and I don't, where she says that like you tell your friends I'm a psycho or something, that like I don't care, I'll just tell all my friends you're gay, and so like yeah, but you can find like Taylor Swift self-titled homophobic edition. So yeah, maybe the like Wicked Dolls porn edition. So next up on the show, we tend to do a little inquiry, a little inquisition into anything else that you or I may have been watching over the last couple of weeks since we last spoke to you, the listeners. So Josh, have you consumed any nice media as of late?
You've caught me majorly off guard with this. Um,
Well, that's absolutely fine because you know what? I've got hella media to talk about.
okay. I hoped you would because I was scrambling through my letterbox to see if I have, but I don't think I have.
Well, let me
Have
just
you
tell
been
you a
on
few things.
wicked.com? Is that what you're going to announce to us?
I have spent the last 2 weeks.
On wicked.com.
I've watched a few episodes of Prison Break, which I
But not
spoke
the
about a couple of weeks
Penguin.
ago. They still haven't broken out of the prison. No, but
Are you
not the
still on
Penguin.
season one?
Um, yeah, bro, there are 22 episodes of Prison Break, season one, and there's 5 seasons. And the last one, I think there's 5 seasons. The last one's just got 9 episodes, inexplicably. I don't know if it got cancelled halfway through or if they were just like, look, we need to do another series, but we got to make it snappy. It seems like they're nearly there, but presumably they're not. Um, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. I watched 1917. I like the fact that it looks like it's all one shot, except a bit where he gets knocked out and then blacks out.
Yes,
And
it's
it's
the whole
obviously different because
film
otherwise they'd have to
meant to be one
um
shot.
it's
I've not actually watched it,
no,
so no.
there's one break like that sort of separates the second and the third act of the movie where he gets knocked out and there's a hard cut to black and then he wakes up and it's the nighttime. Um, but other than that, yeah, it's pretty fluid and most of the time it looks really good. There's a couple of weird, dodgy moments where they've obviously cut between two different shots and tried to hide it. Like there's one that loads of people have spoken about before. He jumps into a river and he turns into a CGI body double, and you can just tell. And it just totally takes you out of it for like a second, and it looks crap. Other than that, it's good. I really enjoyed it.
Just before we move on from 1917, if there's been any issues with audio up until now, Alfie's neighbors have decided that the important podcast recording time is when they're going to play music loudly. So
Yeah,
apologies for that. But yeah, no, carry on. What else have you seen?
I seen Face Off. Nicolas Cage and John Travolta head to head or face to face or maybe swapping around the faces. That movie was crazy as hell. They don't make him like that anymore. It's just insane. Loved every second of it. So long though. And last piece of media that I've consumed, the comeback album by The Cure. Just as good as ever. It's insane. They haven't made an album in like 16 years or something insane like that. Robert Smith's voice, absolutely mental. That dude's like in his 60s. He sounds exactly the same as he did
Is it
like 20,
all
30 years ago.
is it all new
Um
recordings or is it a case of like
yeah.
oh it
Yeah.
is all it's all new?
It's a brand new album. I quite enjoyed it, I think, because I'm a fan of The Cure and I've only listened through to it once, like properly. I think it's pretty good. It's The Cure. They're back. They're making music again, and it's not their worst thing they've ever done. So you know what? That's a win for me. And his story from Gotham City.
My answer to what did I watch or do or read or listen to whatever this week is the Penguin because I watched the Penguin
The Penguin.
and you didn't.
Let's talk about the Penguin.
You watched the Batman, I know that, and it's fair to say
Hmm.
you liked the Batman. Um,
I did.
and so did I, and I thought that because it had such big shoes to fill, that the Penguin might be a bit of a letdown, and
Hmm.
it's not in any way. It's definitely one of the better superhero or superhero adjacent TV shows that have come out recently, and it's probably also just one of the better TV shows that have come out recently. There's not been anything that has grabbed my sort of attention quite so much. I managed to sit
Hmm.
down and binge it all pretty much in one sitting. I've not been able to do that for a TV show for a really long time.
Hmm.
It's all quite long. Each episode is about an hour long, but it doesn't feel it. It does. I mean, I watched 5 episodes in one sitting, and it didn't feel like I'd been sat there
Yeah.
for 5 hours, which is, I think, the mark of a good TV show. Um, you just said about Prison Break is 22 episodes long. For me, that's
I mean, that's
way,
insane.
yeah,
That's
that's
ridiculous, right?
way too long.
But that's
Penguin
becoming
is
less fashionable, I think.
no, it is. That's one of
That
the
was
things
a
I was going
thing
to
for a
say.
while. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the Penguin is 8 episodes, which is about sort of the standard fare now. A time ago that would have been called a mini series or a limited series. Now that is just a series, and I really like that. Yeah, it's an interesting one because it's sort of I think what they've kind of done is taken the obvious cues from shows like The Sopranos and they've run with that, and I think that that was the smartest thing they could do rather than try
Hmm.
and do anything sort of you know, wildly original. They've taken what works and they've placed it within that universe. And it works incredibly well for that, to be honest with you.
And you know what? Like, I've got kind of, I think part of what I do, and I know I kind of, I feel like maybe in the past, maybe even pre the restart in Clovenhoof episodes long gone, I've really kind of ragged on the down the like grounded, gritty comic book story, um, because I've found it funny and wondered why everything has to be like that. But I think I do actually like I like the Batman
There's a
movie
place
for that.
for it, for
I
sure. There's a
like
place for it.
yeah, and I like the idea of the DC universe doing a show about just like a mobster, you know? He's a pretty
Yeah,
big deal mobster, and Batman's got to deal with him sometimes because he gets out of line. But like, he's just a mobster. He's
but
not a superpowered
that's the
guy.
thing actually. You've touched on it there is that Batman has to deal with him sometimes because he gets out of line. And that's something I think the show does really well. Is it doesn't have him get out of line enough that the Batman has to get involved. It's a very sort of small time show. They're not trying to do anything crazy where he's trying to take over the whole of Gotham. He's very much just working his way through the underbelly of it all. Um, I hesitate to go spoilers, but it's not a massive spoiler to say that Batman isn't in it. And it is best that way. And it's not one of those things. Where people will watch it and go, well, why hasn't he got involved yet? Because it's totally plausible that he hasn't. I know everyone watched Daredevil, um, years ago and questioned, oh, why
Yeah.
aren't any of the other Avengers in it? And they do it very well to the point where it doesn't feel like there is the need to put Batman in it, and it doesn't miss him. If anything, it
Hmm.
it makes I think it sets up the Batman 2 much better for not having him in it.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah,
And it
it's
establishes Batman more as a guy who deals with actually serious stuff. Obviously, you know, mob
mm,
activity isn't great. No one wants that going on. But like
there's only so
isn't
much
just
he
sort
can
of like
do.
swinging in to just beat up random goons at
Hmm.
every given opportunity, which
And it's
we'll
clever
talk
as
about later,
well.
but which is something that I find quite funny about the Arkham game that we just played a bit of.
Yes. It's
Um,
clever in how it
but
does
carry
that
on.
as well. In that, so obviously at the end of the Batman, the Riddler floods the city, blows up bombs at the seawall, and floods the entire city. And the Penguin kicks off exactly there.
Hmm.
And they use it very well to sort of explain that
Hmm.
crime has obviously picked up. He can only do so much at once, and crime has massively picked up because everyone's homeless and the city's in absolute tatters. And they don't over rely on that as a
Hmm.
plot point, but they use it very well to sort of remind you, this is why he's not going to be in it. There's just way too much going on right now. Um,
Yeah.
it's good. It's in the same
So it's the
way.
perfect opportunity for a guy who deals with that more
Mhm.
slightly, like not sort of Avengers level threat stuff to just get away with it, and the Batman
Yeah,
can't really deal with
exactly.
him at all.
Um, or Justice League level threat in this context, but yeah, no, it's very clever. It's in the same way that Marvel tried to use. what they called the blip from Infinity War to place all their stories around that of oh half the universe has disappeared, and I always felt like that was kind of overkill for storytelling, and I know that it happened in that universe and they obviously need to address it, but too many stories went yeah, no, this is happening around the time of that, and that's why this and this. But the flood at the end of the Batman is
Yeah.
like the perfect way to do that in that it's not totally world changing, and floods have happened in cities before, but it
Hmm.
sets up a sort of a power
A bit of a
vacuum,
free for all
a bit
period.
of a free for all. And Carmine Falcone has just died at the end of the Batman. Obviously, he was a secondary villain in it, and it picks up there with the Falcones are struggling to who's going to take over the family. Um,
Yeah.
it also sees the rise of other gangs that kind of want a piece of that power, and it's great. I mean, you can kind of imagine from there what sort of series is going to be.
Yeah.
It's excellent though. Like I think even if you aren't interested at all, and this is something that I said about the Batman, even if you aren't interested in any of that sort of superhero sort of thing, it's just a brilliant series. You don't need
Hmm.
to know anything going into it. It perfectly catches you up to speed. It's really well grounded. It's an excellent like mobster series. It ticks every box perfectly, which is really nice and refreshing
Yeah.
for a superhero property. We've
Yeah.
had
I mean, it sounds great. You've sold me on it.
yeah, which is good. That's what I'm here to do, being that you did not watch it. But no, it's good because we've had a lot of Disney
Yeah.
Plus series recently. I think Disney Plus has led to a massive spike in, Marvel TV series content, and the results have been fair to middling at best. There's a couple of good series in there, but it's mostly just sort of mediocre. So for for the first sort of you know, the Batman universe TV content, it's a really solid outing, and it didn't need to be that good. Um, we've had, I don't know if you ever watched Gotham, but it could have very much been a
Uh,
long.
no, I haven't.
You're not hugely missing out. It did some interesting things, and the Penguin was a very main character in it. But it could have totally
What
just sort of skated along at that quality level.
what was that Alfred prequel series?
Oh yeah, what was it? It was called like Pennyworth, the story of Batman's butler.
Is that in this
No,
universe? Did
no,
that
they
happen?
they kind of set it up as in like it might be the Jeremy Irons Alfred from Batman v Superman, or it might be Andy Serkis Alfred, but it was just neither, and it was DC's attempt at doing like Agent Carter with Haley Atwell.
Yeah,
Um,
okay. Yeah,
I
yeah,
never
yeah.
watched Agent Carter, but by all accounts, that was like an okay show, and I think that Pennyworth was just a total swing and a
Yeah.
miss, and like really pointless
Yeah.
because there's, I think that well, okay, this is kind of relevant in the sense this is the risk they could have run with this show, is that sometimes characters have cool backstories. Like
Hmm.
Alfred was like in a lot of iterations was ex Secret Service and all of that. You got a cool backstory, but we don't need to see that. It's cool to hear, and it's cool for someone to go, oh yeah, I was Secret Service, blah blah blah. But we don't need to see a whole series of that, and that's the risk that the Penguin could have run. In that he's a cool character in the Batman, interesting premise, and all of that. We don't need to see a series, but they do enough to justify this series and flesh everyone out as a proper character. Whereas I think Pennyworth was a totally needless cash grab based on just like yeah, somewhere in there is a cool backstory. Like there's nothing more to it than that. Um
Yeah. We'll start doing the show and we'll kind of work it out as we go along.
yeah, and I think that with these things they kind of gamble and rely on the fact that they're going to get multiple series, and a lot don't. I think since
Yeah.
Smallville came out, a lot of superhero TV producers have just gone, yeah, let's just do Smallville. There's got to be something that happened in that character's past, and there just doesn't need to be. Gotham was the same. Gotham was it began. well. It was like it was the Riddler and the Penguin were sort of the two leads, and it was quite a cool um bad guys side of things. But then they made the mistake of making Batman like 12 or Bruce Wayne like 12, and that didn't
Yeah.
work. But it was more one criticism I have of the Penguin, and it is the only criticism I have. Because
Yeah.
I wrote in my notes that I have no, like, I don't even have any nitpicky criticisms of this, but I do. And it is that in the attempt to, like, really drive home how gritty it is, they've changed his name and they've changed where he's
Hmm.
from. And so in every bit of Batman media, not just the comics, he is called Oswald Cobblepot, which is like it's a stupid name, but
Yeah.
it's not a totally unrealistic name. Like someone could have that name, and they've changed his name to Oz Cobb in this, and I don't get why. And Matt Reeves said that he did this because
Oz
it
Cobb.
yeah, he said it needed to be grounded, but Oz Cobb sounds like less of a name than Oswald Cobblepot. Oz Cobb sounds like a shortening on both fronts.
No.
Oswald is a name.
So he's called. Wait, what? So his full name is Oz Cobb.
They've changed his full name to be Oz Cobb. From Oswald Cobblepot. He is now just called Oz Cobb. And I don't understand how that makes it more gritty and grounded. Like, why can't he just be called Oswald Cobblepot? It's not like I'm going to watch it and go, oh, shucks, this is too fantastical for me now. I'm turning this off. Like, it's fine.
And that also doesn't sound like more of a real name.
Oz Cobb doesn't, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't sound like
That's
more of
not a
a
name
real
that
name than
anyone's.
Oswald
Yeah, yeah,
Cobblepot.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Like, Oswald
yeah, yeah,
Cobblepot
yeah, yeah,
sounds
yeah.
just as made up and or real. And I don't get it. But then
Yeah.
also they've changed. So
Oz Cobb just sounds like a weird tech startup.
yeah, that's what I mean. It doesn't sound like a full name. Yeah,
Yeah,
it sounds
it
like
sounds like
Oscorp.
Oscorp from.
It does. It's stupid. But also they've so in I mean we've just played Batman Arkham Origins, some of it. You will have noticed that the Penguin is Cockney British. He's very cool, blimey, governor. I'm the bloody
Whoa,
Penguin. And
I'm Oswald Cobblepop.
but they've made him Italian American for the show, and I think that they shouldn't have. Well, and in the Batman, this isn't a new thing for the show. This is also in the Batman, but I think that that was a mistake
That'd be
because
a really weird bit of continuity
yeah, it
change.
would, wouldn't it? But I don't understand it because to me it now just feels like they kind of did it to make The Sopranos again, and I think that they probably would have been better off leaving him as British. And also, Oz Cobb is not an Italian name, nor is it an American name.
You know what? You know what though? It sounds more like an Italian American guy than Oswald
No,
Cobblecop.
it does, but then just leave him as a British. Like that's the sort of thing that doesn't need to be changed in the sake of groundedness. So when you were
Yeah, yeah,
saying that
yeah.
you've needlessly sort of ragged on the grittiness of these things, that is the sort of needless grittiness that I don't like, where there's things that don't need to be changed and they've done it because it's
Yeah,
more realistic, but it's not,
yeah,
is it?
yeah, yeah.
And the other thing that I didn't like is I don't get why they're so afraid to lean into like the more sort of classic outfits for him. Like, why can't he wear like a, like a suit, like a tuxedo, like a penguiny looking suit? It's not dressed as a penguin, but like, do you know what I mean? Like with the sort of like coattails and everything. And why can't we give him a top hat every so often?
Yeah.
He's wearing a leather jacket quite often, just a leather jacket and jeans. And
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't. You know, he doesn't
Nice,
even need to
nice.
be. He doesn't even need to look anything like a penguin because even in the Arkham games, they've given him like suspenders and a fur coat. Like, give him something a bit outlandish because the thing
Yeah,
is, I get that you want it to be gritty, but he's a nutcase. He calls himself the Penguin. Surely you could lean into him being a bit more of a nutcase and just make him dress a bit stupid. Give him a
yeah,
cane. Give him a monocle. Like this is
yeah, yeah, yeah,
nitpicky. This is the only nitpicky stuff I have is that I wish they wouldn't be too afraid to lean into the comic book stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, it's set in a universe where a
yeah,
rich man dresses up as a bat. Like we can allow him to have a penguiny
yeah,
suit. But no,
yeah.
it's brilliant. Yeah, I kind of I don't really have much more to say because even if you had watched it, I think it's a bit too soon to spoil it. Um, being that the series
Mm.
finished at time of recording yesterday. And even then, there's not
Yeah.
huge amounts to spoil. Yeah, without sort of like really tediously going through plot point by plot point, there's not massive amounts that I can spoil. I suppose
Hmm.
um, that sounds like, oh well, nothing happens, but that's not even the case. It's just all I really have to say about it is just how brilliant it is. Everyone in it is brilliant. Colin Farrell was great in the Batman. Um, he's even better in this, in that he's given a lot more
I
room to
I
shine.
bloody love Colin Farrell.
He's great. Do you know what? I think that as good as he is in everything, this is one of those rare comic book things where this might be sort of the best acting he's got to do because he's playing a character that's totally different to anything he's ever played. And he's in a stupid,
Yeah.
massive fat suit with facial prosthetics on. And quite often, when you put an actor in all of these things, they kind of phone in the performance a little bit, but he's
Yeah.
brilliant. He's really good in it. And if you forget that this is a Penguin thing, if it was, had a name like The Sopranos, people would rave about it a lot more than they do because he's excellent.
Yeah.
Christine Milotti is brilliant in it as well. She is in another film that I love, and I forgot that she was in Palm Springs, which I think we've
Oh yeah.
talked about and maybe cut before. But that's one of my favorite films, and it's a very different role. Obviously, that's like a comedy, and in this, she's playing a mob boss. But she's excellent and definitely holds her own against Colin Farrell. Neither one outshines the other, which is nice. Yeah, I
What's
think
her character?
she is playing Sophia Falcone, so she is Carmine Falcone's daughter. Obviously, in the Batman, uh, Selena Kyle Catwoman was also his daughter, but they're not full siblings. They're related through him, but they're half siblings. Um, and
I see.
I think that that's actually something that's really good is the way that they show sort of the very different lives these two have had with the same father and the impact that he's had on both of them is brilliant. They recast Carmine Falcone for this one. So in the Batman it was John Turturro playing him, but because of scheduling conflicts he couldn't. So Mark Strong plays him this time round. And to be honest, I thought that would be
Mark
jarring.
Strong.
Yeah. He's
Yeah.
excellent. He's brilliant. I thought it would be really jarring because John Turturro and Mark Strong look nothing alike. They don't sound alike, but you don't really notice it. And it's not a needless change either. He's obviously it's in flashbacks because he's dead. So it's totally justifiable, but it's
Yeah.
it's a very well done recasting because sometimes these things take you out of it, but you don't once you're in it, you don't really give it a second thought. Or at least I didn't anyway.
Yeah.
I've got a little bit of trivia actually. I always do a little bit of trivia. Here's a little. So this is the third DC character that Mark Strong has played in recent years as well. Every time he's played a villain. So he was
Must be getting
Sinestro.
getting confusing for the poor guy.
No, no. He was Sinestro in Green Lantern, which is like one of the
Yeah.
biggest setups for a sequel they ever had, where he was set to be the big villain of the second one, and that, for obvious reasons, never happened. Um, he was Dr. Sivana in Shazam, which also one of the biggest setups for a sequel film that just never happened. Obviously, they had a Shazam 2, but they pushed his role back into the third one, and that never happened. And now he's in this, and he's to be honest, this is probably his best role. He's excellent in it. Clancy Brown is Salvatore Maroni, and this is his 19th DC role with this, which I think is just insane.
19th.
19th. I'm not gonna list every single one. He's been in a lot of animated
Give us a
movies.
few. Come on.
I can give you a few if you let me go back to the IMDb page.
Okay.
He has previously portrayed Lex Luthor in multiple DC animated shows, movies, and video games. From Superman, the Last Son of Krypton in 1996 to Lego DC Supervillains in 2018. He played Big Time in Batman Beyond, Sheriff Morgan in The Zeta Project, Wally West, Vice President, and Guardian of Oa in Justice League Unlimited, Mr. Freeze in Batman 2004, He played a mugger in Batman the Brave and the Bold. He played Fire Breather in Young Justice, Parallax in Green Lantern 2011, Zartok in Green Lantern the Animated Series 2011, Negative Man and General Immortus in Doom Patrol, Gorilla Grodd in Robot Chicken DC Comics Special 2 Villains in Paradise, and General Wade Ealing in The Flash in 2014.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so he's
What,
done a lot.
The Flash TV series?
Yes, yeah. So he's a big time DC actor.
God, poor
He's
guy.
great. He's great in this. And oh yeah, so a big thing Colin Farrell spoke about in the Batman press tour was that he was desperate for the Penguin because in again in every media the Penguin is a smoker and he likes cigars and they wouldn't let him do it in the Batman, and Colin Farrell spoke a lot about that, how he was like really wanted them to put it in the Batman and they didn't, but he was successful and they do let him smoke a cigar in this. I'm glad that it wasn't too gritty for a cigar.
What a win for Big Tobacco.
I know, I know. I just think it's crazy how the
Finally.
the Batman is a film for adults and he's not allowed to smoke a cigarette in it, but in a TV show for adults.
Yeah.
And that's another thing actually. I think this show marks the first time I have ever seen on film or TV a vape used.
Can you not smoke in in a movie because it would push the rating up, which would potentially damage the cinema release, but it's not
Very
such a big deal with
possibly.
streaming.
Yeah, very possibly. Yeah, you're probably right. I'm not gonna look that up, but I know tobacco use is a thing that they mark on the age ratings.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a scene where one of the Maroney family is getting a tattoo done, a back tattoo done, and he's sat there on the tattoo chair and he's vaping. I thought there's something really
Mm.
funny about that. And I thought about it, and I cannot for the life of me think of any. Vaping is commonplace, but I cannot think of any other media in general where I have seen someone vape. And that's probably why, to be honest, is if you
It
can't
looks
use tobacco.
ridiculous. Yeah.
No, it does, but it's like such a common thing every day. Everyone's doing it inside and outside, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's really weird to see it on film. Oh, the other thing is the
Yeah.
Penguin uses
Yeah.
TikTok.
What?
Yeah, so the way that he finds this Maroni who's getting his tattoo done, so right before
Yeah.
the vaping scene, the Penguin's there stood with all of his penguin goons, and he's showing them a video on TikTok of this guy announcing that he's getting a tattoo done. So I think it's really funny that this like
No
fairly
way.
big time mobster has TikTok on his phone.
Does
Um,
that take you out of it at all? Those weird
um,
sort of like phone things?
no, do you know
Or
what
does it
it
just kind of work
didn't?
within the universe?
I think it
Yeah.
works because I think that it's the only thing that took me out of it is I forgot that it was set in the modern day, but there's no reason for me to have
Yeah,
forgotten
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
he
Yeah,
drives a
yeah.
brand new Maserati, so it's like totally fair. But no, it doesn't take me out as much as I thought. The only thing that I did think was like the Penguin using TikTok. If Batman had pulled up a TikTok, I mean, he's supposed to be the world's greatest detective, so it's like plausible that he might have found a video on TikTok. But for the Penguin to use it is like really bizarre.
Yeah.
Too gritty to call him Oswald Cobblepot, but not too gritty to have him
Mm.
watch like TikTok.
Yeah.
Bizarre.
It'd be good if there was a scene, like a little filler scene where he's just kind of scrolling through, Charlie D'Amelio and like checking up on the Hype House
Yeah, like
guys
practicing a
if they're still
dance.
about.
I think they should have had him practice
Yeah,
a
that would be
dance. I
nice.
think if it was a Marvel TV show, like there would have been an end credit scene of him practicing the Renegade.
He'd have been practicing a dance.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Um, but no, so it's a brilliant show. It involves I don't know what elements, but Matt Reeves has spoken about how he incorporated elements of the cancelled Gotham PD show into it. I imagine Gotham PD was cancelled because that's what the show Gotham already was. But it's good that they didn't totally scrap it and have just rolled it into this. And it is
Yeah.
absolutely deserving of a second season. And it's one that I think even if you stopped doing the Batman films, it is they've set it up now as a universe that can keep on giving things like this quite plausibly as well. And I think without it
Yeah.
feeling overdone because it is so grounded, you could kind of just do any type of TV show within it. Um, like it's great. Oh, the other the one last thing that I wanted to talk about, and I haven't because you haven't seen it, is that he has the Penguin has a little sidekick called Vic, and what I thought was, well, I don't know if it's intentional, and I suppose we'll see later down the line in the Batman films, is that they used the origin story for um Jason Todd, Robin, the second Robin,
Hmm.
for Vic. So in the comics, Batman finds Jason Todd when he is trying to steal the wheels off the Batmobile. Like him and his little gang of youths, they're trying to take the wheels off it so they can sell them. And that is how the Penguin finds Vic. So he's
Yeah.
trying to steal the wheels off his Maserati, and he, you know, um, basically either
Ah,
tells him
nice.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
yeah, yeah.
kill you, or you're gonna work with me. And I think that was cool, and like I think it's way too similar for it to be accidental. So I kind of wonder if they're gonna do
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
Jason Todd in the Batman and show the parallels because they've said that the Penguin will be back in the films. Um,
Yeah.
I think it would be quite interesting to sort of, you know, how they try and do in all these films, like the villain and the hero are a lot more alike than they think. I
Yeah,
think
yeah, yeah.
it would be quite cool for them to do that, and I think that's kind of what they're doing. I thought that was it was a cool little reference, I suppose, but maybe they could spin it off into more. So
Okay.
spoilers, but not huge spoilers. But a little spoiler is at the very end of the final episode, the bat signal does flash into the sky. So we were talking about how he's a bit too sort of he's operating in the shadows, but obviously come the end, he's achieved his
He's
goal. He's
worked his
big
way up
enough.
a little bit.
He's
Yeah, yeah,
worked
yeah.
his way up, and yeah, and they make it clear the Batman knows about it, and that is the best usage of the Batman that they could have done because it's kind of like I don't know, you don't root for the Penguin in this at all. He's a terrible bloke, but it's that kind of thing where you think, oh no.
Yeah.
I think it works really well to just have him in it like that. The best possible way they could have included him, and I think it probably sets up the second film quite nicely. And actually a good way to skip because so often we get caught up on the oh how does this thing link to this thing. I think we can now totally skip and ignore the aftermath of the flood in the second one if you want to by going yeah all of that was resolved in the Penguin. Here we are. You don't need to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you don't need to get caught up on what happened in the last one and what are the repercussions because we've already seen that now.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if the Batman 2 opens up with the Penguin getting beaten to a pulp, to be honest with you.
That'd be quite a fun way as well to just like wrap up
Yeah, it would be the perfect
the
way to do
series.
it.
You feel like it's building to something, and then at the start of the next movie, he just gets the shit kicked out of him, and
Yeah.
that's that.
Yeah, I think, well,
Yeah.
because Colin Farrell said that he's got 5 or 6 scenes in the second one, so he's not going to be in it much. So I think it's very
Yeah.
plausible that
Yeah. Yeah.
the extent of it is that he's just going to get battered, which is like in the first one. And I think that's a great use of the
Yeah.
Penguin is if he's not the most menacing villain. Like he's obviously up to no good and he's quite successful, but like every time he faces the Batman, he's no match at all. And that's also the other thing is when the bat
Yeah.
signal pops up, you know he's
He's
not
like
like the Joker.
he's like Ipswich. He's like
Yeah.
Ipswich getting back-to-back promotions to the Premier League and then getting immediately slapped.
But yeah, if you want to put it in that terms, it's exactly that. Like he does very well on his level,
Yeah.
but don't let him get too big because he is just gonna get put straight back down. And
Because
it's yeah,
he'll get socked.
yeah. I'm really glad they didn't get sucked into because I Robert Pattinson probably wouldn't do TV, but I wouldn't have been totally surprised if they'd still tried to include the Batman in
Oh, he's
some
bigger than
way.
TV, is he?
Yeah.
Bigger than the telly.
I don't even think it's that.
Yeah.
I think that he's very much just a movie actor, and that's not a bad thing. Um, but I think that
Yeah.
they could have very well done what I think Marvel would have and tried to just like work around that and still link it. And the best thing they could have done was it ends on the
Yeah, yeah,
bat
yeah.
signal, which is just yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
So have you I mean you watched it, we all know. I'm just outspoken. Have you got any questions? Any questions
Yeah,
left?
of course. Um, my two very important questions for you are, well, the first one, do you think the Penguin series is better or worse than Megalopolis?
It's a tough one, see, because
It sounds
Megalopolis
like it,
is
for
it's a
sure.
high bar that it's set. It's a very good film, and the Penguin was underwhelming. Um, so I'd say Megalopolis is better. No, it is yeah, there's like no hesitation to say that the
It's
Penguin
definitely the
is
Penguin.
better. And not just because I'm a fan of this property. It does help, of course, but um, even if you weren't interested, it's just a better concept, a better show. Visually as well, actually, I didn't even mention that. Visually, it's just as good as the film. Um, and this is relevant, and I
Yeah.
forgot to say it, but this is relevant.
I think to be fair,
Megalopolis.
that's probably quite handy as well because because the Batman is pretty it's like it's not that like visually ambitious. It looks
No, but it's a
great, but
very
it's
good
not
looking
like
film
the kind
still.
of thing that you can't redo at
No, well, that's exactly it.
on a smaller budget.
Well, this is what I
Yeah,
was going to say is that Megalopolis is a film about a city, and the city in it was totally unconvincing and uninteresting, and
yeah,
that's a big flaw. So the Batman, I wrote back when Clovenhoof had a website as well. I wrote a review of the Batman, and the thing I said in it is that Gotham is done so well because it's not totally outlandish, but it's so distinct and so fleshed out that it feels like a character in itself. It's got a lot to it, and the Penguin is the same. I mean, whether they've reused sets or not, I don't know. But Gotham in it, it doesn't just necessarily feel like a cheap sort of New York. It has its own things going on. It's got its own distinct visual style, and it feels very lived in. Um, and it feels like it sets up a lot more stories to be told within the city. And I think it's really ironic that the movie about a city fails to do that, but a series about the Penguin manages it.
does a really good job of it.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I suppose that leaves up pretty nicely. My last question: was it better or worse than The Apprentice?
Um, I don't know if The Apprentice is our official one, but I'll go with that anyway, because it's gonna
Okay,
be it's not gonna be there for long. The Apprentice was brilliant. It was a really well made film. It was a very
yeah,
important story to tell, but um,
particularly in the current times.
mm, yeah, yeah. If you want to hear about that, go and listen to the 10-minute episode we put out. But I think that the fact that with The Apprentice, as good as it was, the fact that you hadn't seen it and I had about sort of 10 minutes of talking time on it, whereas The Penguin, you haven't seen it and I have, I mean, probably about an hour of talking time about it, it kind of says it all. I think that it's kind of an unfair advantage
Yeah,
because it's a TV show, but it is just, it's quality from start to finish. It's not miles
yeah,
better, and this is purely opinion. I think it could go absolutely either way, but I think just purely for the amount of sort of substance it has and the fact that it's an original story, as great as The Apprentice is, it's one thing to retell an existing story, but to make an original story in out of source material that is very much already played out is is quite something how they did it. So yeah, I would say that the Penguin is now the best thing that we have
the
ever talked
best
about.
thing we've ever seen.
Well, the best thing I've ever
Oh
seen.
my
Yeah.
word.
No, it's brilliant. The Penguin leads us very nicely into we haven't really done it for a while in the way that we used to, where we would do a film and then a linked piece of media. But we're doing it now. The Penguin leads us very nicely into part one of what should be a recurring series. So we played something today, and we'll probably continue to play it. But what did we play, Alfie? He's
We
thinking the cogs are
played
turning. He's thinking of
Batman
some.
Arkham Origins.
You know, that's the first, like, I totally spoke over you there, but that's the first time you've actually just said the title of what we've played. Like, normally, if you listen to the episode, you'll hear him say what we've played or watched or whatever. But what you don't hear is the 10 cut outtakes where he tries to work out some sort of play on that title. So I was expecting, like, Buttman Arkham Origins or something like that. But, like, the first
That
time
would
that
have been
he
great.
just
Shit.
yeah, the first time that he just straight up said what we played, I actually talked over in anticipation of a
Well,
stupid.
I think we should keep this. I think we should keep this in just as, a little bit of
No, it's staying
context
in.
for,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Mm.
mean, of course.
Yeah, so we played Batman Arkham Origins. Not all of it, I might add. We've played a quarter. Well, yeah, no, we've played a
Just the
quarter
first
of the
little bit.
story. The first quarter of it. I can't promise that this is part one of four for Arkham Origins. This is probably part one of two, but we will be in our weekly releases. We will be playing through the Arkham games. So this isn't my first
Mhm.
time playing them. I've played all of them a couple times, but this is Alfie's first time playing them.
It is
So
mine. And you know what? You could tell. You could absolutely tell it was my first time playing it.
mhm.
And because I'm not I I'm not a gamer. I like games. I played games. I play games pretty regularly. But oh my God, every single time I try and play a new game, it would seem that I'm just horrible at gaming. Um, and if at some point we end up doing any kind of like video accompaniment to these
Yeah, actually,
talking
we
about
will be.
games
I
and
should
stuff,
say that we will
I'm
going
almost
forward be
quite
doing that.
excited for the I'm quite excited for the listeners to see almost. I'm not really sure why, but quite how horrendous I am at playing games because I wasn't expecting to be this bad at playing games. I just don't know I can't do it for some reason, and I used to be able to, but I can't now. And what's that about? Because I couldn't string the attacks together. I died in like some just like random little halfway bit, like transitional period to between two big bits of mission. It's like when you get to the Penguin's ship, and there's like two snipers and like four armed thugs that you have to beat up. I could not do it at all. And I don't know if is it a difficult game? Like
No,
I don't
so
think necessarily like
I played it. I must have been like 11 when I played it for the first time, and I found it to be quite tricky, but not any more than a regular 11-year-old would. And I played it today, and for reference here, like we started playing it at the same time, like in sync, and I was like absolutely burning through it. And we were sort of speed running it. We weren't exploring the open world. We were literally just going from point to point. Um, it probably took me about 45 minutes to get through a quarter of the game. It must have taken Alfie about 2 hours to get to the same point. Um, and
I think
uh,
it was about an hour and a half. I think I took about twice as long as you.
Yeah, and this is not someone who is bad at video games, like you said. Like we've talked about Star Wars Battlefront, for example. We talked about that when Obi-Wan came out, and that is something that we were very much on a par at. We play, GTA together quite a lot, and again, much the same, sort of very much on a par at that. Um,
I'm normally pretty decent at
it's normally pretty decent.
games.
I think this is a
I just
product.
couldn't get it. And
I was gonna say, I think this is a product of someone who predominantly plays FIFA now.
yeah, yeah, that's true. That's my main game
You
these
don't
days. And
really
to be fair,
venture out.
also, I've never really played. I know it's slightly different, but I've never really played fighting games. The kind of attack combo linking is something that's pretty foreign to me.
Yeah, but I don't think it's
Um,
even. I think that there's a thing. See, there's like a famous sort of like combat type set up by these games, which is like Arkham style combat. It's in a lot of games now, but
yeah.
it's notoriously easy, and um it's not like Dark Souls where you got Souls like combat where it's quite difficult. Arkham combat revolves around three
It's slow and
buttons.
lumbering and
Well, it's not even that. It's just that like
yeah.
it revolves around three buttons and they're very simple buttons and it's square to attack, or whatever console you're on, but we're on the PlayStation, so it's square to attack, triangle to block and counter, and circle to swish your cape back and forth. And it's not like hard. Like even the counter thing, you've got a big warning above their head when they're going to attack you. And I've never, ever, like I didn't
Yeah.
watch you play, but I've never known anyone to struggle with it quite like you do. It's a famously easy to grasp combat type, and that's why they use it in superhero games, so that you can feel like the superhero. Spider-Man used the exact same combat system. And the whole idea is that you feel like you're in a
Yeah.
superhero movie, you are the superhero. So how you manage to make it
And
look
I
like a
couldn't handle
regular
it when I
bloke.
played Spider-Man. I couldn't do it. I played a few missions and I couldn't handle it. I messed up. I just kept dying. I can't keep track of all the things. I don't know who's coming at me from where, and I know they make it very clear. They make it very obvious. I can't time the counters properly. Sometimes you'll be halfway through a thing and suddenly you've got to do a quick time event when you haven't been having to do a quick time event before. Miss it. Get absolutely just like slammed. Like my canonically, Batman died like 8 times. He not canonically, I suppose. The opposite of what I meant to say. In my playthrough of Arkham Origins, Batman. Okay, there are alternate universes, right? In which in
There
this
are 8 different alternate
Arkham game,
universes where he
in which
died.
Batman in which Batman was just shot to death on a boat.
So
Um,
like I said, the whole
it,
idea is that you're supposed to feel like you are the superhero. And I think Alfie kind of encapsulated that in such a good way is that this is how it would feel if you were Batman. He totally just got domed in the head like 8 different times and killed. And if any of us were Batman, that is what would happen. So in
yeah,
a way, it
yeah.
totally achieved
I
its
got the
sort
most
of
authentic superhero
exactly.
experience.
So,
There's a
pat
one
yourself on the
in
back for
eight
that.
chance that you'd even stand a remote chance of winning that fight. And the way that I did win that fight was by hiding in a hole, jumping out, taking out one dude at a time, and waiting for another man to walk over.
Which to be fair is a totally Arkham game thing. There's no shame in that. But no, it's so Arkham
Yeah.
Origins is a spin-off prequel, and I say spin-off because it's not made by the original team because at the time that this one came out, they were bang in the middle of working on Arkham Knight. Um, there's not too
Hmm.
many years between the two games, but there's a massive technological gap. And the reason we started with Arkham Origins because we were going to totally ignore it, just like they did when they remastered them. But it was totally panned when it came out. It's not anymore. I think people have had a sort of, as they always do, had a switch up on it. But it was absolutely panned when it came out. And playing it back, it has aged. But if you acknowledge that we're playing a PS3 game, um, you know, in an era that's 2 console generations on, it's fine. Like it's a good Batman game, and we're only a
Hmm.
quarter of the way through the story, but the story's as solid as any. The combat's solid. The puzzles are very easy, but it's I don't see what it could do really to make it much better, to be honest with you.
Um, I suppose it's just like it's just kind of like a classic of the time game thing. But stuff like dying on that ship so many times and then respawning
No, that's
like
true.
on the ship and then having to fly back across. Actually, I the thing is because we mentioned about the open world, I want to talk about the open world.
Hmm.
Um,
Which you
Obviously, I
haven't
haven't played
explored much
the
of.
other games in the series. I haven't explored much of, but what the hell is there to explore? It's just
Yeah,
like
so
there's just goons and like and it's just like rooftops that you just have to kind of climb around really quite awkwardly. That you can't really get up high enough to get anywhere in a long straight line, a satisfying straight line. It's like you're like climbing and scrabbling around weird dark rooftops just full of like goons.
just standing
Yeah,
around.
they're just all out. There's no
Well,
one else out in town.
yeah, so like I said, it's made by a different team, so the core mechanics stay the same, but the obviously the sort of the direction of it is different. And the
Yeah.
the main line Arkham games are very sort of as much as a Batman game can be, they're quite vibrant. And Arkham Origins is not. It's very grey and it's very boring looking. Um, and we were saying, well, I was saying when we were playing it, it is the only, to my knowledge, maybe it does later in the story mode, maybe they acknowledge it. It's the only one to not acknowledge why there are no civilians out. Because in Asylum, obviously it's a prison. There's nobody just kicking around there. City, they've annexed a large part of the city to turn it into a bigger prison, which, why you would do that is a different thing. That's a thing for a later episode. But again, makes sense. There's no one there. Although there's a couple of people you need to rescue. And Arkham Knight, everyone's quarantined, because of the Scarecrow feared gas. But yeah, I kind of don't get why they set it in a whole city if they weren't going to do anything with it. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the
Yeah.
one thing about
It feels
Spider-Man.
like it feels like a really weird, empty environment.
It's the opposite of the
Um,
Penguin. I was just saying, Gotham needs to feel like its own
yeah, yeah,
character, and it totally doesn't.
yeah.
Yeah, I suppose that's
Yeah, it
that's
doesn't at all.
a large part of the problem of Origins is that it's kind of just uninteresting and a bit boring. Um, it was also criticized because it's so buggy, and I did notice that everything is really low res for some reason, and this is not. Um,
Yeah.
this is not because we're playing some sort of dodgy emulator. Like this is a PS3 copy of the game being streamed to the PS5 and PS4 respectively, but still, it's really low res in places, and everything is really textureless and weird and glossy. And I don't get it because the other ones are not like that. And even if it's a different team, surely you would keep a consistent sort
No.
of art style.
I suppose I can kind of understand why maybe they would try and distinguish the art style a little bit.
Yeah,
But it's
possibly.
still
But why would you
they
make it
just
look
haven't done it
worse?
very well.
Yeah, well, but that's
Well, yeah,
that's
exactly. They've taken a bit of a swing and a miss to be like, well, we're gonna give this like our own go, our own take on it, and they've just slightly missed the
well,
mark.
the cutscenes have their own distinct art
I
style.
think.
They look great, but they've got their own sort of distinct art style from the
Hmm.
main games in that they're very they're trying a lot to look like movies of the time, which
Hmm.
which it does well. I mean, it looks very good. There's a famous cutscene with Deathstroke that was used actually as inspiration for Ben Affleck's cancelled Batman film, but the actual game itself, like it doesn't have a distinct art style. It doesn't seem to have any art style. It just is grey. And I don't understand why it's a prequel. And
Yeah.
I said this to you when we were playing. It's a prequel, but like everything Batman owns, and I mean everything, is far more technologically advanced than the game set like 5 years afterwards.
Well, because one of the things that you were saying, because when we started playing it, you were like, oh, I I don't quite see why this gets so much hate. This is fine. This is whatever. And as we started to get a bit further into it, it was just like, okay, right, this doesn't feel properly thought out. This doesn't feel polished or finished. This doesn't feel
Yeah,
like anything other than like a little bit of a half-baked rip-off that
yeah,
hasn't quite been actually thought about in enough depth, like stuff like that, like the fact that there's no explanation for why he's got so much more advanced gear. There's no explanation for the state of the version of Gotham that we find ourselves in. There's no explanation for like anything that's going on. It just feels like it was just like oh God, we gotta make a game. We gotta make a game. Let's just do it. Let's just get it out. Batman,
yeah.
give him this, give him that, whatever. No one's gonna care. Um,
I think that
and
what they
so
should have
it's
done in that case
like
is just separate it. Like I think they should have
yeah.
just, if they had just made it its own series, it would stand alone fine. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's a bad game. I just think, like you were saying, it just doesn't feel very well thought out. It lacks polish, but it's not a bad game.
Mhm.
I mean, we have sat
No, I
there
mean
and played far worse
I've
games.
played yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, but it just doesn't fit. I mean, I suppose we'll finish it and then we'll have a slightly more well-rounded opinion. But I feel like at this point, I have been enjoying it, other than the fact that I'm horrible at it. But also, there are just there are bits, and it's like already, it's like you're only a quarter of the way in, and you're already feeling like, oh God, like this mechanic is
Mm.
badly thought out, or this like element of the way that the world is designed is frustrating, or just like confusing, or like there are quite a few moments of like level design which I found just like you just get lost
Yeah,
and there's no
frustrating.
direction, and it's also can be frustrating when games just like put you on like a rigid path that's just like this is where you go next, this is
No,
where you
do you
go
know what?
next,
I
and you're like
don't even
following
mind
arrows all the
that.
time.
Like, that's
But there's
okay.
a halfway house that you can find. Yeah,
Mm.
that would be preferable to just like you're walking around a bunch of identical weird corridors and there's not much of an indication of where you should go unless you just happen to turn on your detective vision in the right place and it'll show you the wall that you're meant to break through. But like it leads to like a lot of moments of just like, oh God, like what am I why am I playing this? Like I'm
Yeah,
not getting anywhere with this. And then when I do get somewhere with it, there's not that much of a satisfying outcome to make me go, okay, I want to see what's next.
yeah. It's mediocre. It's not a bad game, and I don't mind that
No.
on rails approach. But I think that what's disappointing is when we come to play Arkham Asylum, is that is a very linear game because of sort of technological restrictions. They couldn't really do the open world. And it's a confusing map. And I remember playing Arkham Asylum and being like wholly confused about where to go. But each area of the asylum had a distinct feel, and each bit that you were trying to get to had a reason
Mhm.
for it. And there was someone there that you needed to meet. There
Mhm.
was something you needed to get. Whereas what I find frustrating about Origins is you go through the grey city and you get to the grey boat, and then you could totally just go through the grey door and it's all grey and blah blah blah. You could totally go through the door, but it's locked. But we've just watched him break a wall that is thicker than that door. So instead we have to go through the grey
Yeah.
corridors and
Yeah.
traverse the grey water, and it's all just like nothing and for no reason, and it's inconsistent. At least with Asylum is there were a
Yeah.
lot of rooms with a lot of colour, a lot of villain variety, which I know that there is in this game, but every
In
villain
the
that they reel off is totally just B-list and like
yeah.
oh look cool, I'm gonna fight like the electrocutioner, and that fight
In
is
the first
funny, but
yeah. In the first mission, before you get to the electrocutioner, when you're looking for you're looking for like to work out why you go into the prison. It's just before you fight Killer Croc.
Mhm.
And you like at one point you're prompted to do a takedown where you like punch through a wall and grab a guy and pull him back through it. And then like a little bit later after you fight Killer Croc, and then you're going to work out why like why your the why the bat wing like like autopilot things aren't functioning because there's some signal jammer or whatever. You get stuck by like a little fence door, little metal chain link fence gate door.
Yeah.
Um and it's like, oh, it's locked. Oh, oh, okay. Right, guess I can't go through there. Nothing I could do. But like you've just punched through like a brick wall in a prison to kill a guy or not kill him.
No,
Very
no, he
specifically,
never
not kill
kills.
him.
He never
You
kills.
can always see the character's heart rates. They're still going. When you go into detective vision, the guy you've just like broken both legs of and like slammed his head into a railing. Detective vision, steady pulse. He's fine.
I like that, and there's I don't think it's so much in Origins, but definitely in Arkham Knight. There's takedowns where you can like slam someone's head into an electricity junction box, and it's like enough volts ran through that guy's head to like kill 10 men. But you check detective vision, and his heart's still beating, and he's down at like puts him puts
He's
down like
good.
whether they're scared and whatnot. And it puts him down as like calm, like he's totally
Yeah,
just been
yeah,
murdered.
yeah. It's
Um,
like the like some of the thugs will run over to a guy you absolutely like you dive bombed onto from like the top of a crane.
yeah,
Like
like
you
a
jumped on
heavy
top of
man in
him,
heavy
definitely broke
armor.
his spine, his head. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like and like you'll go and hide, and like a couple of other thugs will go over to him and be like, "Phew, he's still alive, but Batman must be here somewhere." And it's like it's like that's a dead man. You said that you were saying that it's surprising, other than the new Suicide Squad game that we spoke about and you hate, that they haven't done a
Yeah.
DC villain movie because they DC villain game because they obviously want to have you kill people so bad.
Well, that's the thing
They
is, it's like
want it so bad.
you can drop all of this sort of like pretense of, oh well, he hasn't killed them, he doesn't kill. Just give us like they did an Arkham Knight DLC with a Harley Quinn game. It was about an hour long. Give us a full length game, and because a lot of the mechanics as well like would work really well in like a sort of I mean, in the way that they do in like Just Cause, where you're not afraid to just like totally blow something up, like all of the explosive gel and the throwable
Yeah,
weapons and all of the baseball bats and stuff. Just like what, like why have you put all these mechanics that are totally there to kill someone in a game where we're so scared of the guy killing people? Yeah,
yeah.
Deathstroke was a playable character in Arkham Origins, in the
It's
challenge
like how
mode,
in
and he uses all the same combat as
yeah,
Batman, but Deathstroke kills. So it's like you can't have a guy that kills and a guy that
yeah,
doesn't kill using the exact same move set. Because at this point we're just acknowledging
yeah.
that Batman has totally just murdered like
Deathstroke's
hundreds of
just doing it a
things.
little bit harder.
Oh God, yeah, of course.
It's like you know how like in Watch Dogs 2, you do actually have the option to play through the whole game without killing anybody using the like stun weapons.
Yeah, or the 8 ball on a
Um,
string that would totally
like
just
that
kill
can be
someone.
done. Oh yeah, true. Yeah, other than that, I guess. But they're knocked out. They're KO'd. Even though you see like blood coming out of their skull. Yeah, maybe not. But I think you can do it just with the stun gun.
Yeah, you know you totally can, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
they
yeah.
don't class the 8 ball as a murder weapon, even though it totally would just cave your head in. If I came at you with an 8 ball and a
Insane.
bungee rope and hit you in the head, like you would be damaged
Dead.
at least. Yeah,
Yeah.
at least you've got brain damage.
But okay, so but having said all this, I am quite excited to finish it and then to subsequently play the rest of the games.
Yeah, I think that
Because
that's all it needs to do though, is I think that you're saying all these sort of, you know, this, that, and the other is meaningless, but it's a game where you are excited to finish it. And that's all it needs to
yeah,
be and do. It doesn't need to be like Red Dead 2, The Last of Us level of quality. It's a 2013 Batman prequel game. Um, it is
yeah,
mildly disappointing and it is underwhelming, but it also serves a purpose, and I think it
it's
was
fine.
massively over criticized. Yeah, it was fine. It was a bit buggy, but like so were a lot of games. And I think that people are so overly critical, and then 10 years down the
Yeah,
line, they come back round on it. And I was looking at the IMDb reviews for it, and everyone is like, this is the best Batman game I've ever played. This is so good. And it's like, it's exactly the same game that probably the same people were totally panning. I think people are so reactionary and so sort of, um, well, of course they're subjective, but so subjective with their thoughts and reviews on a game. And they don't look at it and go, actually, this game does everything it needs to do. It's got quite a good story. I mean, we're a quarter of the way through, but already it's like it's nothing majorly gripping, but it's got all the villains established, all of their motives established. There's a bounty on
hmm,
Batman's head. Chaos ensues. That's kind of all it needs to be. Um,
yeah,
I mean, this is kind of just
yeah.
this is part one, I suppose, of a two-part. We'll have it finished, I think, for next week. It shouldn't take too long. Um,
We'll get back to you with what we
but yeah, we'll
finally
get it
think.
back to you.
But this is, yeah, I suppose just, having just started it, having dipped our toes, or me having dipped my
You dipped your
toes, you
toes.
having played it
I've
before, and
played
this
it.
being a
Yeah.
replay. Um, yeah, which also two nice perspectives to have on it. The newbie and the old head. Isn't that some serious podcast delight?
It is some serious podcast to like. I think that's the other thing. Is it's quite
Yeah,
sort of bizarre, I suppose, talking about a video game in a podcast because video games are so often they're a topic for YouTube videos, and we will do that. We will put gameplay with them.
yeah,
You know, when we actually do the specific series. But yeah, it's interesting, I think, to talk about the game in the same way we do as the films because you can't see anything we're talking about. But I hope you've kind of got a good idea
yeah.
for what it is. Um, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm happy that you have finally dipped your toes in the Arkham game series because I think that whether you like Batman or not, or whether you're indifferent or whatever, they are they are definitely
Yeah.
um one of the most iconic game series of all time, the Arkham games. Like even if you don't really know Batman, you've probably heard
Yeah.
of the Arkham games if you play video games. And yeah, probably Origins isn't the best starting point. It is where I started though, when it came out. And yeah, I mean if you can stick with Origins, the rest of the series is a breeze. And yeah, I mean maybe uh maybe by the time we work through this, we might have a better or worse than system for video games too. We've covered some video games before, so it's
Ooh.
totally, yeah,
You know what? At this point, and I know it really might be terrible to say, but
worse than.
I think maybe
Yeah, yeah,
maybe worse than.
that's no, that's fair to say. Worse than Megalopolis so far, but again,
Yeah.
it's hard because
But
it's
that's
a
not
totally
official because we haven't
different
finished it, and it's
and it's a
completely
totally different
different.
medium.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, do you know what? I would say
So,
if you put a gun
Arkham
to my
Origins
head.
as of yet unrated.
Yeah, no, if you put a gun to my head, I would say on a par with Megalopolis because, and I will just give a brief
Yeah.
explanation of why. Both of them have the
Yeah.
exact same lifeless, dull, unmemorable feel to their city, and both of them feel totally unpolished and
Yeah.
unfinished. So they're like, I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
if we had to sort of put a litmus test for games and video games, our
They're kind
Arkham
of on
Origins and
par in
Megalopolis
video
are
game
true
and movie
neutral.
form.
Yeah, they're the base level for
Yeah.
both, and that's a good way to kick it off, I think. Um, yeah,
Perfect.
we'll be back with Arkham Origins, and we will be back with the Arkham series. We started it, we were going to do the Penguin and the Arkham games, but doing the Arkham games as a secondary subject is quite a large chunk. So we thought, why not make it our weekly release, as it seemed to do well doing a weekly release. So why not? And that about does it. Like we said, to be honest, there's not much more to say. We don't know what the main episode will be on in 2 weeks' time. So we're doing the new format where we have our main episodes every 2 weeks, and we'll have a little bonus extra episode in the middle. The bonus episode will be the continuation and the finalization of Arkham Origins. What the main episode will be, I don't know, and we will have to have a look. But probably something really exciting, maybe something new, maybe something old. If you've listened to that episode, come back and comment and tell us what that episode was about. It would be nice to know in a sort of time
Let
travel
us know
situation. Because if you don't let us know, it
from the
might never come
future.
out. Yeah, it might never come out if you don't let us know. It only comes out in a future where you let us know what it
Perfect.
was
The
about.
Grandfather Paradox podcast comment situation.
Exactly.
Exactly.
If you could, as played out as it is, if you could subscribe and like it and rate it and share it with a friend, that would be immensely helpful. As always, we're very thankful for the people that have done that already.
Thank you.
And give a oh my God, it's the bat! It's Batman! Ah!
Ah! Ah!
He got punched second, like a long way after. Slow reactions from Batman there to getting us both.